You live in such a nice house, huh? Just so you know, your room is gone. The person who had moved into my home while I was away was my estranged older brother, who I hadn't seen in a while. This new house, where I live with my husband, was purchased by me. Yet, my brother acts as if he already owns it. It's like a takeover, and when I protested, he smirked maliciously. Don't say such harsh things. Someone like you doesn't deserve this house. My name is Sally. 27-year-old freelance designer. I married Bob, who is 4 years older than me, 2 years ago. We met through work, and after dating for several years, he proposed. Bob works for a major corporation. I'm a home-based designer with irregular hours, and since we're both workaholics, we don't spend much time together but maintain a moderate relationship. Our house, a stylish designer home, was acquired at a great price due to my work connections. It's a modern house incorporating our ideas, with a large garden that Bob really likes. I'd love to have a barbecue in the garden if we have kids, Bob had said with shining eyes soon after we moved in. I've often imagined a future living happily with my husband and children. But as we're both focused on our careers, it seems like we won't be thinking about children for a while. My work is on track now, and I feel very fulfilled. Part of why I chose to be a designer was to become independent as soon as possible, besides my strong aspiration. My brother Tom, who turns 33 this year, was always favored by our parents since we were kids, and they were cold to me. They pampered him for being the eldest, and he took it for granted. Tom is not only smart and good-looking, we're so proud as parents, my mother would praise, and my father would agree, saying, he's our pride and joy. Then, they would invariably add, but Sally is. Why is there such a big difference between our son and daughter? I often felt worthless when they spoke to me like that. Tom, too, looked down on me, flaunting his intelligence and good looks. Indeed, he was popular, while I was just average in appearance. I couldn't stand up to his arrogant attitude and was even treated like his errand runner at times. To escape from my family, I decided to become a designer in middle school and started studying immediately. I spent a lot of time drawing in my room, as family time was never peaceful. I loved bringing the images in my mind to life. Discovering the profession of a designer online was the turning point. As a high school student, I continued self-study while saving money from part-time jobs. Upon graduating, I left home and vowed to make a living as a freelance designer. Starting as an unknown designer was tough, but I kept accepting work and gaining experience. Gradually, as clients referred me to others, I felt my efforts paying off. Thankfully, I've grown into a renowned designer with continuous contracts from large corporations. I shared my background with Bob before we got married. He listened intently and said at the end, "You've been through a lot. It's amazing how you've worked so hard without giving up." I knew then that I could live and support each other with him forever. However, an incident drastically changed our married life. Bob made a big mistake at work, affecting the whole company. He was transferred from the headquarters to a branch, significantly reducing his income. Damn it! Why do I have to suffer like this? I was at a loss as to what to say to the angry Bob. He was furious but didn't seem remorseful. Pointing it out would only add fuel to the fire. So I gently told him, "Don't worry about the living expenses, I'll handle it." But he didn't take it well. Pushing my hand away, he glared at me and yelled, "What? You think you're better than me because you earn more now? Stop belittling me." He stormed off to his room. I had never thought of that, but I was shocked by his sudden change. I realized I had hurt his pride. He stayed in his room and ignored me when I tried to apologize the next day. His mood didn't improve over the next few days, and the atmosphere at home became tense. We spent less time together, and our conversations dwindled. Bob started going out more for work and social events. My work was busy, and we couldn't find time to talk properly. Despite living in a beautiful designer house, our relationship cooled down. After 3 months of this, I had to leave for a 2-night business trip. Bob, having weekends off, was probably out. As he often stayed out late recently, he often didn't come home until Sunday night. But when I got home around noon, surprisingly, Bob, whom I thought was out, seemed to be at home. Moreover, there were two unfamiliar pairs of shoes at the entrance. One pair was men's sneakers, and the other, high heels that a young woman might wear. Wondering if Bob had a friend over, I entered and headed straight to the living room. Along the way, I heard voices chatting and laughing, so it seemed he indeed had company. But the scene that greeted me as I entered the living room, saying I'm home, was totally unexpected. There were Bob and a couple, a man and a woman, sitting across the table, enjoying a meal together. The woman was a stranger, but I recognized the man and was shocked.
Tom! What are you doing here?
The man at my house turned out to be my long-estranged brother, Tom. Ever since I left our family home, I had avoided any direct contact with my family. Even when my marriage to Bob was decided, I only sent a letter home and didn't have a ceremony. So I had no idea what Tom was doing now, and the fact that Bob knew him was completely unexpected. As I stood there bewildered, Bob, Tom, and the mysterious woman all looked at me with smirks. Tom was the first to speak.
Bob invited me here.
You live in such a nice house, huh? I couldn't believe my ears.
What do you mean? I never knew you and Bob knew each other.
As I stood confused, Bob began to explain with a sigh. I met Tom through work. He's an executive at a client's company. And this woman here is Michelle, Tom's fiancée, the daughter of the president of that company. After explaining his connection to Tom, Bob introduced the woman sitting next to Tom. Michelle looked about my age, but wore flashy makeup and had the same condescending smile. Then Bob continued, actually, Tom and Michelle are looking for a house to live in together. I wanted them to see our designer house, so I invited them over. About a week ago, Bob had met Tom at a client's company and discussed this. They took the opportunity of my absence to visit our designer house. What started as a mere visit turned into Michelle insisting, Tom, this house is so lovely. I want to live here, as they toured the interior. Apparently, Michelle, being a pampered daughter of a wealthy family, always got what she wanted using her parents' money. Tom, taking up her suggestion, approached Bob about handing over our home to them. I was dumbfounded by this explanation and exclaimed,
That's outrageous! You can't just decide this without me. This house is... You should be happy that Michelle likes the house so much. Besides, my future career depends on this negotiation.
Interrupting my words, Bob rolled his eyes as if he was beside himself. It turned out Tom had arranged to poach Bob for his company as a condition for handing over our designer house. I confronted Bob.
Didn't you love this house too? How could you agree to their terms?
Of course I did. If a better offer is waiting, I can give up this house. You always did whatever Tom said, right? So you won't object. Bob replied with an air of inevitability, then snorted. Moreover, Tom and his entourage had already brought in their bare necessities and had been staying here since yesterday. It was outrageous how far things had progressed without my knowledge.
Even if he's my brother, I won't allow such an act of taking over our house. Leave right now.
Don't say such harsh things. I got Bob's permission. Besides, Sally, who are you to talk to me like that? You never stood up to me before, so just follow my lead this time too. Tom's domineering attitude hadn't changed at all. He continued, Michelle is using your room upstairs, so you don't have one anymore. This nice house is too good for someone like you, so I'll take it. Bob joined in with his laughter. You can sleep in the garden. After his heartless remark, Michelle also began to laugh mockingly at me. Controlling my anger, I finally asked Bob the question that had been bothering me.
How long have you known Tom? Did you know all along that I'm his sister?
Despite Bob starting to negotiate giving away our house to Tom, I believed he must have had some attachment to it. We had even talked about having children when we first moved in. I didn't want to believe he was easily swayed by Tom's words. But Bob, shrugging his shoulders in disdain, dropped a bombshell. I've known Tom since before I married you. From his casual tone, I realized the truth. Bob married me just to get in good with my brother Tom. He was secretly plotting to improve his position using his high corporate position. Realizing that he only used me, I felt like my world was crashing down.
When I heard about your past before our marriage, I could barely keep from laughing. It's only natural you be compared to the outstanding Tom.
Bob said, cruelly affirming the treatment I'd received from my parents and brother. His previously caring demeanor was all a lie. Watching Bob, now freely expressing whatever he wanted under Tom's influence, I knew I couldn't continue this marriage.
Okay, I get it. I won't interfere with you guys anymore, do as you please.
I said calmly and quickly headed to my office, disgusted with all three of them. Their cheers and laughter followed me from behind. I opened my laptop, trying to focus on the work project from a recent contract to calm myself. Soon, I heard commotion outside my room. Thinking Bob and Tom were up to something, I went to confront them, but the door wouldn't open. It seemed blocked from the outside. It seemed like something heavy was blocking my path from the outside, but my head remained calm. I sighed deeply, realizing the extent of their harassment. They probably expected me to beg to be let out for the bathroom. But I remained calm and pulled out a small key from my desk drawer. My ground floor office had a back door for emergencies. Since I was the only one with the key, I could leave even if the main door was blocked. I collected my laptop and some essentials, and slipped out unnoticed. I walked to a nearby supermarket, then took a taxi to a nearby hotel. Finding a vacancy, I decided to make the hotel my base for a few days and began preparing for my next steps. Tom and his group were clueless about the irreversible situation they were creating in my house. Unforgiving of their actions, I was determined and made a crucial phone call. Over the next few days, I intermittently checked my home's security cameras via my smartphone. It seemed Bob and Tom were away at work during weekdays, and Michelle often left the house too. Seizing the opportunity, I returned home once when they were all out, moving the rest of my belongings to a storage unit. As Tom said, Michelle was using my room, and many of my personal items had been discarded. Thankfully, everything I needed was in my office. After that, I moved from the hotel to a short-stay apartment. Since escaping, I've been ignoring numerous calls and emails from Bob and Tom. I wanted to block them but decided to wait a little longer. About a month later, as I was finalizing various arrangements, I received a call from Bob. He sounded panicked on speakerphone, with Tom's anxious voice in the background.
Hey Sally. What have you done? Why would you sell the house without telling us?
Bob and Tom were clearly frantic, and I could hear Michelle screaming in the background. They were probably in chaos back at the house. I told them calmly.
It's not Tom's house to begin with. Plus, I'm the legal owner. I simply decided to sell it and contacted a real estate agent. Don't joke with us. We knew you were the owner, that's why we kept calling you, but you ignored everything.
Tom's desperate yell came through. Apparently, when I agreed to hand over the house to Bob, he mistakenly thought that the house became his own, but they must have realized the house was still in my name after I left. It was a house I proudly designed and built myself. Sad as it was to let it go, my resolve didn't waver. I'd arranged for its sale right after leaving, and the valuation was scheduled for today.
Change your mind now. Instead of selling it, Tom and Michelle can live there.
Tom pleaded desperately. But I firmly replied, that's impossible.
Why not? Haven't you guys checked the mailbox for any mail?
I asked, sensing confusion on the other end of the phone. During the time I lived with Bob, checking the mail was my task since I worked from home. Bob wasn't in the habit of looking at the mailbox, and neither Tom nor Michelle probably cared about it. I hadn't been back for a while, so I imagined the mailbox must be full.
What's this about?
Suddenly, Michelle's angry voice cut through. From her reaction, I gathered she had gone to check the mailbox. There should have been an envelope in the mailbox addressed to Tom and Bob. I heard them both gasp as they saw what was inside the envelope. I had hired a private investigator to look into Bob's affairs when I left the house. Bob always said he was going out for work or drinks on his days off, but it was too frequent, raising my suspicions. The investigation revealed his infidelity. They also found that Tom was secretly involved with a woman other than Michelle. The envelope I sent to the house contained photos of both Bob and Tom cozying up with young women, entering hotels. I had seen them before sending them. Michelle must be furious seeing those photos.
I can't believe you cheated on me with another woman. I'll tell my dad and get you fired.
Wait, Michelle, this is... Tom stammered, probably pale-faced. However, I calmly asked Michelle, who was blaming Tom as if she were the victim.
Did you also find something addressed to you?
She stuttered, huh?
Along with the photos, there should be a list of missing items from the house. You recognize the items on that list, don't you?
I continued as Tom and Bob started murmuring, "What's that?" They had found that Michelle was stealing valuable items from the house. Many of my belongings, which I thought Michelle had discarded, had actually ended up with her. Many had already been sold.
Michelle, your actions amount to grand theft. I'll be reporting this to the police, just so you're prepared, I informed her. Wait! I only borrowed them! The amount of stuff listed isn't just borrowed level, you know?
I countered, and she fell silent. Soon followed by sobbing.
Please, don't report this! What would my dad say?
Ignoring her pleas, I turned to Bob, who had been silent. Bob, are you listening? I don't intend to live with you anymore. We'll discuss the divorce formally later. I've already sent a lawsuit to the woman involved too, I said, but Bob didn't respond, probably in shock. I sighed and finally addressed Tom, ready to confront him.
Tom, I couldn't stand up to you as a child, but I can't forgive you for what you've done this time. I won't be controlled by you anymore. Don't ever contact me again.
After I said this, Tom, apparently enraged, cried out, "Are you even family?" I couldn't hold back my anger anymore.
Don't joke. Don't rely on the word family just now. You never treated me as family.
Despite my rebuttal, Tom continued to rant. Unable to bear it any longer, I ended the call unilaterally. Later, I met Bob to discuss our divorce. We chose a cafe we used to frequent during our relationship. Seeing Bob there didn't bring back any happy memories, and I quickly presented him with the divorce papers. It was already signed by me, needing only his signature. However, he never consents to the divorce.
Think it over, will you? I lost the chance to get a position at Tom's company because of this mess, and I'm struggling at my current job. If we divorce now, my situation will worsen.
I was appalled at his self-preservation. I decided to confront him with a fact.
I heard you lied to your affair partner about being single. What? How did you know that?
I heard it from her.
She was shocked to learn you were married. Since she was also deceived, I've withdrawn the lawsuit against her.
I took a sip of my coffee and continued while Bob bit his lip in frustration. Moreover, she's pregnant, Bob. You knew, right? She's upset because you suddenly cut off contact. When I mentioned this, Bob slammed the table.
That kid isn't mine. I won't acknowledge it.
The other customers turned to look at us. The pregnancy and paternity were between Bob and his affair partner, and I was determined to divorce him. So, I steered the conversation back to our divorce.
If you don't agree to divorce now, we'll have to take it to court.
At the mention of a lawsuit, Bob's face went pale.
Wait, if it goes to court, I'll be fired for sure.
When he pleaded, I urged him to sign the divorce papers right there. Reluctantly, Bob finally consented to the divorce. I received a small alimony later. After the divorce, I had another chance to talk to Bob's affair partner. She was certain Bob was the father of her unborn child, as she had no other partners. They were still out of touch, and she was planning to raise the child as a single mother and demand child support from Bob. As for Bob, his whereabouts after the divorce remained unknown. He might have lost his job, but I had no interest in finding out. Tom, whose engagement was broken off because of the incident, lost his position at his company and was demoted. I received a call from my parents once about Tom, but I told them I would have no further dealings with him and would not return home.
I will live my life without relying on a family that never cared for me.
I felt relieved after saying this. It seemed better to have no ties with my family. Michelle, Tom's former fiancée, was not reported for theft due to her father's intervention. Instead, they settled out of court, and she had to pay me compensation. She was sent to her grandparents' house by her father for re-education and started working for the first time in her life to pay off her dues. As for me, now single, I decided to move away from the area where Tom and Bob lived. I decided to move away from the land where Bob and Tom lived. I went abroad to further my skills as a designer. I'm currently studying design and living with a man I met there. Our days together are happier than when I was in the States, and we're considering marriage.